Wild Rose was initially started to kind of meet a fundamental need between the gentled horse and the horse that can be successful in a private setting. Most horses, as you probably know, the requirement to be successful is generally having them be under saddle. And there are a lot of people that are really great at doing the early process of gentling and earning trust, but not as many people that can really get them started under saddle while maintaining that trust. And so that was the original intent, was to bridge that gap so that they would have a successful home in the private sector. So many of the Wild Rose horses, there's a wide range of what they've been capable of. Kayla's area of expertise is in eventing, so a lot of the horses have gone on to do eventing. There are trail pleasure horses that have come from us, and I would say those are the two main areas, the equestrian sport, that our Mustangs have found their homes. What do I wish people understood more about them is that they really can be very trustworthy companions, and if you take the time to build that trust with them, you guys can do whatever you want, honestly.
Awesome. Now my business has been filming horses for sale, and most of the horses that I market are 30, 40, 50. I've marketed $250,000 horses. On average, I haven't seen Mustangs being sold for nearly as much as what I think they should be sold for. Because in my opinion, riding what I now know to call a domestic horse is a whole different scenario than someone like you who's invested all this incredibly, I'm sorry, but risky time getting this wild horse to a point where it's trusting and calmer and trusting people because they've not been touched. And when they were, it was a pretty rough start of being rounded up. And so I would think some of these horses are a little bit more complicated. And then, yes, you've done amazing jobs with your students here and listening to them say, oh, it's just a horse. Well, not every horse starts that way, and not every horse can continue on that path. My heart in being here is also to help you have better exposure that these horses have some really unique properties that are even superior than domestic horses. So walk me through some of the things that you like more about working with Mustangs than maybe some of the domestic horses that we have.
Sure. What I really love about Mustangs is I love their brains. I sometimes call it street smarts. I work with off-the-track thoroughbreds and warm bloods and more domesticated breeds as well, and Mustang in a hairy situation will almost always think it through. Their self-preservation is so much higher than domesticated horses, so that's a pretty awesome thing. I don't have to worry about them as much. You can turn them out in a group, and they know how to keep themselves out of trouble. But on the riding side of that, since I do eventing, my favorite horse to ride cross country is a Mustang. They're smart with their feet. They're looking out just as much as I am where we're going. They're brave. They've been out in the wild. They know the terrain. So those are my two favorite things, as well as they're hardy. I can count on my hands the amount of Mustang injuries I've had, and the amount of thoroughbred, warm blood, domesticated injuries far exceeds that, which is, it's unfortunate, but I mean, that's what domesticity does. So the wild horses do know how to take care of themselves. So that is definitely one of my favorite parts about them.
So street smarts, hardy.
Yes, athleticism, just good with their feet, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And as you bring in students who come here to ride your Mustangs, many people probably wouldn't even realize that they're riding a horse that used to be just an open range on the wild. You give lessons regularly on these horses.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept, and usually when we tell the kids that these horses used to be wild, they're shocked, but it's kind of cool because then they, think about what the horse was like in the wild, and they're riding it now, and it's a super lesson horse.
So, is there a person that maybe shouldn't be suitable to adopt a Mustang?
I'm a firm believer in anyone can learn. So as long as you have the right resources, if you're working with a trainer, if you're open to learning, I think that's probably the most important aspect of this is, yes, we've had some people that maybe don't have the patience to do it themselves, but if they're open to learning and they're open to getting help, then it is possible to work with them and help them along the journey. And, for some that I see that are perhaps not suitable for adopting a Mustang, I can often suggest that they wait and adopt a horse that is more finished. Because typically if I have gotten pretty good over the years at matching horses with people, and once they go through training, develop trust, and they've started showing, a lot of these horses are just as awesome as domesticated horses, and that might be a great option for someone who maybe doesn't have the patience to work through starting a young Mustang or even being with a green Mustang. So this is my personal Mustang mare, Atalanta. I call her Ada. I got her in the 2016 Mustang Makeover event that was held at the Budweiser Event Center here in Loveland. And so she was a very difficult horse to work with. And when I bring in new horses, new Mustangs, I usually classify them one of two personality types. And there are the ones that are a little bit more afraid of stuff and situations and atmosphere, and there are the horses that are more afraid of people. And Atalanta was definitely one of the horses that is more afraid of people, less trusting, and these horses tend to take a lot longer in the beginning. So they can be a little bit intimidating to the first-time adopter because they're very flighty, they're very worried. These are horses you can't just go up to and touch right away. It took 4 weeks to be able to touch this horse, and that was more of like a barely touch, and then another 2 weeks to be able to touch her on the offside. She was pretty difficult, especially given that at that time I was perhaps not working with as many horses as I am now, and I spent close to 8 hours a day in the pen with this horse, just trying to get her used to my presence and starting to trust me. So I spent a lot of time with her. I bonded with her really well. I had many people tell me she wasn't going to make it to the makeover, but eventually we got going, got riding, made it to the makeover, and made the top 10. And I did not have the money to buy a horse, but I told myself if she went for less than $1,500, I would buy her back because I really wanted to keep her, and she went for $14. So I was really excited to be able to bring her home. She's been my heart horse ever since. She was my 2016 makeover mount, and then in 2018, just 2 years later, she went to the American Eventing Championships with myself at novice level eventing, and we made the top 10 there, and were awarded Adult Pony Rider, the top Adult Pony Rider award, since technically she is a pony. And so since then, she's been moving up the levels in eventing, and 2019, 2020 showed training level eventing, always in the ribbons. She's never had a cross-country penalty. She's a pretty neat horse. You know, just with myself, I've worked with tons of other horses in this sport, and she's definitely my favorite horse to be on cross-country, even though she's only 14-1. And training level fences can be a little daunting on a smaller horse, but she is pretty fantastic. So I've had a ton of fun over the years working with her, and as I said, she's definitely my heart horse. We've done bridleless, bareback, she's taught lessons, my 8-year-old can ride her, so definitely a horse I'm going to keep for life. And going back to what I talked about before about the different personality types, this personality type can be harder in the beginning, but they do end up making fabulous horses. So if you have the resources and have training or good trainers and professionals to help, these horses can be pretty awesome. On the flip side of that, horses that tend to be more afraid of things, situations, and atmosphere, they tend to be fairly easy right away. So these horses you can touch usually from day one. Sometimes we've even had horses that we've been able to get on and ride on day 3, and so they seem like they're going quite quickly early on, but then they can hit roadblocks further on. They tend to be a little bit more spooky, they can be a little bit more herd bound. So each personality type has their ups and downs, but it is super important to understand what personality type you have and what personality type you want to work with. As I said, these can be a little intimidating in the beginning to a new adopter, and others can be super confidence boosting because you're able to touch those horses right away. But you do have to understand that training is still involved with both, and you need to understand what type of horse you have so that you know what resources that you'll need moving forward. So after all of the work I've done with this horse, she has definitely become my most trustworthy mount. Trustworthy on the ground, trustworthy with my child that's 8 years old. I can put her on her and know that this horse is gonna take care of her, bring her home. Anyone can work with this horse, and she's just overall probably the easiest horse to work with that I have.
We all come from a lot of different backgrounds in the horse world, so sometimes there are things that can feel unattainable just because that's not your background. But I think that Mustangs are a lot more widely attainable than you would think, especially when you find the right person working with them. I've been really grateful for Kayla and the way she's really kind of opened up what I thought was this really tough nut to crack, which is gentling Mustangs and finding good homes for them. And she makes it look incredibly easy. And I just feel really grateful to have found that. And I think that that's a really important component to getting into the world of gentled Mustangs. And I think that I'm very grateful for that. I think for one, it's, as someone who does work in the American West, it's a massive ecological crisis, both for land managers, landowners, and the horses themselves. So just knowing that you can really contribute to the alleviation of a pretty large issue in the West is, I think, a really important component to thinking about, adding a horse friend to your family. The other thing I would say is just to know how incredibly versatile they are. I feel like Mouse, with this kind of training, really could go anywhere from here in terms of discipline, and so just knowing that they really can do well in such a wide variety of spaces that maybe might not seem like a traditional fit for a Mustang. And I have an English background, and I really like riding hunter jumper. I like practicing dressage, but I actually mainly got him to help me with my field work. I'm a wildlife ecologist, and he is going to help me do non-invasive methodology in the backcountry. So a lot of it will be like endurance riding in the backcountry, where I need a horse that can think on its feet, and that I can kind of have a really dependable bond with. I'm really grateful to have found Kayla through this process. I think that it would be a very different experience without someone who has such an amazing gravitas in this space and in this niche of bringing Mustangs into English disciplines, and also just being such a kind horsewoman. There's lots of horse people that aren't people, and so I'm really, really grateful that Kayla is so warm and welcoming as well, which has made this process that much easier, and her skill set and expertise is just, it's unmatched.
Yeah, I had wanted a Mustang. I mean, I saw what Kayla did with them and how athletic they are, and just they're such a overpopulated but underutilized horse that a lot of people don't realize how great of an option they are. So I really couldn't think of a reason not to get a Mustang. And again, how many of them are kind of in need of adopters in this country kind of just very easily convinced me that I wanted to adopt a Mustang. Their feet tend to be way better, and they, I think, also use their brain a bit more in certain situations and kind of think through things just as a survival instinct. So although by the time I had gotten her, she had already been gentled, started under saddle. Since then, I have worked as a working student for Kayla kind of on and off throughout my time in college, and so I got to firsthand experience what it is like to gentle wild Mustangs, and from right when they come out of the holding facilities. I think the most important thing for people to understand about working with untouched Mustangs is patience, and it's definitely one of the best choices I've ever made in my life, and she's my best friend.
Before going into it, I didn't know a whole lot about Mustangs, but when I was working with them, just seeing their growth, and how intelligent they are and versatile is absolutely amazing. And they definitely let you know and communicate with you of what they do and they don't prefer with everything too, part of the riding. So, like her at first, we didn't think she liked jumping, but then she, got into it, and now she's a star with it all. And we have beginners on her, especially with time and patience. They can become the greatest horses ever. I think the biggest thing that I want people to know going into it is also just, having patience, but also just not having expectations, because they all, work at their own pace. Some take longer. We've had ones that, maybe for 2 years, but then now they're doing awesome and are riding now. They just needed that, extra little bit of time. And we've had others that I can get on them after 3 days, from us being there and, them being untouched. I've got on one like that and, walking into the trailer like it was nothing when we were, bringing them home. Another, big thing that I would like to, that I wish I knew before I got a Mustang too, was that once you get one, that you'll probably end up with more, and it will be hard to say no to having multiple Mustangs. There's times that you might be stuck on everything too, but it's all worth it in the end.
I know, she's just